The cottage always smelled like cinnamon and pine needles, even in summer. Now, standing in its empty living room for what might be the last time, all I could smell was dust and betrayal. My name is Nancy, and until yesterday, I thought I knew what family meant. That was before my brother Mauricio showed up at my door at 3 a.m., drunk and crying, confessing that he'd gambled away our inheritance, our grandmother's beloved cottage that held 25 years of our childhood memories. "Nancy, please, you have to help me," Mauricio pleaded, his hands trembling as he gripped my kitchen counter. "I can fix this. I just need time." I poured him a glass of water, trying to steady my own shaking hands. "How much do you owe?" 250,000. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The number hit me like a physical blow. "The cottage is worth twice that. How did you even—" "I used it as collateral." His voice cracked. "I was sure I could win it back. The guy I owe, he's giving me 3 days to pay up, or he takes ownership." I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. "Does Aunt Olivia know?" He shook his head. "You're the only one I've told. Please, Nancy, you're good with money. Maybe we could get a loan or—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop. That was last night." Now, walking through the cottage's rooms, I touched the walls where our height measurements were marked in pencil. The window seat, where I'd read countless books on rainy afternoons. The creaky third step that we'd always jumped over during hide and seek. My phone buzzed. A text from Connor. "How are you holding up?" "At the cottage. Need to clear my head," I typed back. "Want company?" I hesitated, then replied, "Yes." 20 minutes later, Connor's truck crunched up the gravel driveway. He found me sitting on the porch swing, the same one where Grandma used to tell us stories about her youth. "Brought coffee," he said, handing me a cup. "And donuts. Comfort food." "Thanks." I took a sip, letting the warmth spread through my chest. "I can't believe he did this, Connor. The cottage was supposed to stay in the family. Grandma made us promise." Connor settled beside me on the swing. "What are you going to do? What can I do? I don't have that kind of money lying around." I watched a chickadee hop along the porch railing. You know what hurts the most? He didn't even ask before using it as collateral. The cottage belongs to both of us. "Have you checked the paperwork? Maybe there's something—" My bitter laugh cut him off. Mauricio handled all the inheritance paperwork after Grandma died. Said he'd take care of everything, since I was dealing with my divorce at the time. I shook my head. Stupid, trusting him like that. "That's not stupid, Nancy. That's being family." "Yeah, well, look where family got me." My phone buzzed again. "Mauricio. Meeting with the guy today. Please tell me you have good news." I turned off the phone. Connor watched me carefully. "You know, my offer still stands. I could loan you." "No." I stood up abruptly. "I'm not solving Mauricio's gambling problems with more money. That's not helping him." "Then what?" I walked to the porch railing, gripping the weathered wood. "I don't know, but I need to do something. This cottage, it's not just about the money. Every important moment of our lives happened here. First kisses, broken hearts, celebrating victories, mourning losses, Grandma's last Christmas." My voice broke and Connor was beside me in an instant, his hand steady on my shoulder. "Remember when Callie fell out of that oak tree?" I pointed to the massive tree in the front yard. "Mauricio caught her. He was always there, always protecting us. What happened to that brother?" "Addiction changes people, Nancy." "Yeah." I wiped my eyes. "Well, maybe it's time I stopped enabling him." My phone started ringing in my pocket, Aunt Olivia's ringtone. She probably knew something was wrong. She always did. But I couldn't talk to her yet, couldn't bear to tell her how badly her nephew had betrayed us. "I need to go through Grandma's things," I said suddenly. "There might be something. I don't know, but I need to try." Connor nodded. "Want help?" "No, this is something I need to do alone." I gave him a weak smile. "Thanks for the coffee, and for being here." After Connor left, I stood in the cottage's doorway, looking at the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. Somewhere in this house were answers. They had to be. Grandma was too smart, too careful to leave everything to chance. I closed the door behind me and headed for the attic. If I was going to find anything, that's where it would be, and I had 3 days to find it. The attic stairs creaked under my feet as I climbed, each step releasing clouds of dust into the afternoon light. I'd always loved this space as a kid. It felt like a treasure trove of family history. Now, it might hold the key to saving our legacy. "Where do I even start?" I muttered, scanning the jumble of boxes and trunks. My phone buzzed again. Mauricio. I silenced it without looking at the message. In the far corner stood Grandma's old hope chest, its brass hardware dulled with age. I remembered her telling me once, "Everything that matters is in that chest." At the time, I thought she meant old photos and keepsakes. Now I wondered if there was more to it. The lid was heavy and the hinges protested as I lifted it. Inside, the familiar scent of cedar and mothballs brought tears to my eyes. Photo albums, quilts, letters, tied with faded ribbons, and underneath it all, a leather document case I'd never seen before. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first paper I pulled out made my heart stop. "Official deed," I read aloud, my voice echoing in the dusty space. "This property, hereby transferred solely to Nancy Whitney." The date on the document was 3 months before Grandma died. My name, not Mauricio's, was clearly listed as the sole inheritor of the cottage. "That's impossible," I whispered, but there it was, in black and white. Legal documents, properly notarized, leaving the cottage to me alone. Which meant... My phone rang, startling me so badly I dropped the papers. Aunt Olivia's name flashed on the screen. This time I answered. "Nancy, dear, what's going on? Mauricio's been calling me in a panic." I took a deep breath. "Aunt Olivia, did you know about Grandma's will? The real one?" A long pause. "So you found it. You knew." My voice cracked. "Your grandmother made me promise not to tell unless absolutely necessary. She knew Mauricio had... problems. She wanted to protect the cottage." I sank down onto an old trunk, clutching the papers. "But after she died, Mauricio said we inherited it together. He handled all the paperwork. Because you let him," Olivia said gently. "Nancy, you've always tried to protect him, even from himself. Your grandmother saw that too. That's why she left the cottage to you alone." He forged the inheritance documents, I realized, anger building in my chest. He committed fraud. What's brought this all up now? Before I could answer, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Mauricio's voice called up, "Nancy, you up here?" "I have to go," I whispered into the phone. "I'll call you back." Mauricio's head appeared through the attic opening. He looked terrible, pale and sweaty with dark circles under his eyes. "Been looking everywhere for you," he said, climbing up. "Why aren't you answering your phone? I need to know if you've figured something out about the money." I stood slowly, the document still in my hand. "Oh, I figured something out all right." He saw what I was holding and froze. "Where did you get those?" "Grandma's chest." I held up the deed. "Want to explain why you forged inheritance papers when the cottage was legally left to me?" All the color drained from his face. "Nancy, I can explain." "Explain what? How you committed fraud? Or how you gambled away property that wasn't even yours to begin with?" He took a step toward me. "You don't understand. I needed..." "Don't." I backed away. "Don't you dare try to justify this. What are you going to do?" His voice was small, scared. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. The boy who used to protect me, who caught Callie falling from a tree, who taught me to ride a bike. Now he stood before me, a stranger shaped by addiction and lies. "I'm going to call Zuriel," I said firmly. "He's still practicing law and he needs to see these documents." "Nancy, please. You have until tomorrow morning to tell the family what you did. All of it. If you don't, I will." I walked past him toward the stairs. "And Mauricio, don't try to stop me." "It'll destroy everything," he called after me. "The whole family will fall apart." I paused at the top of the stairs. "You already did that when you betrayed us." As I descended the attic stairs, my phone buzzed with a text from Connor. "Any luck?" I typed back, "Found something big. Meet me at the diner in 20. His response was immediate. "On my way." The documents felt heavy in my hands as I walked to my car. Heavy with truth, with power, with the weight of decisions to come. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something other than despair. I felt strong. The bell above Joe's diner chimed as I pushed through the door. Connor already had our usual booth, 2 steaming mugs of coffee waiting. I slid the documents across the table before even sitting down. "Read these," I said. His eyes widened as he scanned the papers. "Holy shit, Nancy." "Yeah." I wrapped my hands around the coffee mug, trying to stop them from shaking. "There's more. I found letters in Grandma's chest. She knew about Mauricio's gambling long before any of us did." I pulled out a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. The waitress approached, but Connor waved her away with a quick shake of his head. "This one's from 6 years ago," I said, unfolding a letter dated just before Grandma's diagnosis. "Listen to this. My dearest Nancy, I've watched you carry the weight of others' burdens for too long. The cottage must be protected, not just for you, but for the future. Mauricio will never understand why I made this choice, but you will." Connor leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "She was protecting you. She was protecting all of us." I took a shaky sip of coffee. "There's a letter here from Mauricio to her, begging for money. He was in debt even then." "What are you going to do?" Before I could answer, the diner's door chimed again. Callie walked in, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. "Nancy, I thought that was your car outside." She bounced over to our booth, then stopped short when she saw our serious expressions. "What's wrong?" "Sit down, Cal," I said softly. She slid in beside me, her usual energy dimming. "Is this about Mauricio? Aunt Olivia called me. She seemed worried." I spread the documents out on the table. "I need to tell you something, but you have to promise to let me finish before you react." As I explained everything, the real deed, Mauricio's fraud, the gambling debt, Callie's face went through a range of emotions: shock, anger, hurt, and finally, determination. "That absolute jackass," she breathed. "No wonder Grandma didn't trust him with the cottage." My phone buzzed. A text from Mauricio. "Please don't do this. Give me time to fix it." I showed the message to Connor and Callie. "Fix it?" Callie scoffed. "He's had years to fix it. Decades, even." "The deadline's tomorrow," Connor reminded me. "What's your plan?" I straightened the papers, squaring their edges with precise movements. "First, I'm calling Zuriel. We need to know exactly where we stand legally. Then—" The diner's door chimed again. This time, Mauricio walked in. He looked even worse than he had in the attic, if that was possible. "Nancy," he called out, heading toward our booth. "We need to talk." Callie stood up, blocking his path. "Back off, Mauricio." "This is family business, Cal. Stay out of it." "I am family," she snapped. "The family you're destroying." Other diners were starting to stare. Connor stood up too, his presence solid and reassuring. "Maybe we should take this outside," he suggested quietly. We moved to the parking lot, where the summer evening was cooling into dusk. Mauricio paced in front of us like a caged animal. "The guy I owe," he said, "he's willing to make a deal. If I can get half the money by tomorrow—" "Stop." My voice was stronger than I expected. "Just stop, Mauricio. There is no deal. The cottage isn't yours to bargain with. It never was. You don't understand what these people are capable of." "And whose fault is that?" Callie demanded. I held up my hand, silencing them both. "I'm calling Zuriel tonight. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to the police to report the fraud. After that, I'm telling the whole family everything." Mauricio's face crumpled. "They'll never forgive me. Maybe that's what you need," I said softly. "Maybe hitting rock bottom is the only way you'll ever change." "Nancy, please." He reached for my arm, but Connor stepped between us. "I think you should leave," Connor said firmly. We watched Mauricio walk to his car, shoulders slumped in defeat. As he drove away, Callie turned to me. What about the guy he owes money to? That's Mauricio's problem now, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. I'm done enabling him. My phone buzzed again, Zuriel responding to my earlier message. Free to talk now, this sounds serious. Go, Connor said. We'll handle things here. Callie hugged me fiercely. We're with you, Nancy, all the way. As I drove home to make the call that would change everything, I thought about Grandma's letters. She'd seen this coming years ago, had tried to protect us all in her own way. Now it was my turn to protect our family's legacy, even if it meant tearing down the walls of secrets we'd built around ourselves. Tomorrow would be hard. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was doing exactly what needed to be done. Zuriel's office smelled like leather and coffee, and the morning sun threw long shadows across his desk as he reviewed the documents. I'd known him since high school, but his professional demeanor still took some getting used to. This is clear-cut fraud, he said, looking up from the papers. The original deed is ironclad. Your grandmother's intentions were explicit. What about the gambling debt? Any contracts Mauricio made using the cottage as collateral are void. He had no legal right to make those agreements. Zuriel leaned forward. But Nancy, you need to know. These people he owes money to, they don't care about legal rights. My phone buzzed. Aunt Olivia. Family dinner tonight. No excuses, everyone needs to talk. Perfect timing, I muttered, showing Zuriel the message. Are you ready for this? Before I could answer, his office door burst open. Mauricio stormed in, followed by his frantic secretary trying to stop him. I'm sorry, Mr. Mack, she stammered. He just pushed past me. It's okay, Sarah, Zuriel said calmly. Please close the door. Mauricio looked wild, desperate. You can't do this, Nancy. These guys, they're coming to collect today. They don't care about legal documents. Lower your voice, Zuriel warned. Or what? Mauricio laughed bitterly. You'll call security. Go ahead. It won't stop what's coming. I stood up, facing my brother. Are you threatening me? I'm trying to protect you. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Neither do you, Zuriel interjected, holding up the documents. This is serious fraud, Mauricio. We're talking potential jail time. All the color drained from Mauricio's face. You wouldn't. Try me. I met his eyes steadily. Be at Aunt Olivia's tonight. You can tell everyone yourself, or I will. Nancy. Get out of my office, Zuriel said firmly, before I call the police. After Mauricio left, Zuriel turned to me. You need to be careful. People like this, they play dirty. I know. I gathered the documents. That's why I'm done playing nice. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparations. Connor helped me make copies of all the documents. Callie texted updates about who was coming to dinner. Even Aunt Olivia called to ask if I needed anything, though I could tell she was nervous about what was coming. At 6 o'clock, I pulled up to Aunt Olivia's house. Cars lined the street. Everyone had shown up. Through the front window, I could see people gathering in the living room. My hands shook as I grabbed my folder of documents from the passenger seat. Connor's truck pulled up behind me. Thought you might want backup. You didn't have to come. Yes, I did. He squeezed my shoulder. Ready? Inside, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Mauricio sat alone in a corner, while other family members clustered in small groups, whispering. Aunt Olivia bustled around with drinks, trying to maintain normalcy. Nancy, Callie hurried over. Uncle Robert's here. Even Cousin Pete came. Good, I said. Everyone needs to hear this. Aunt Olivia clinked her glass with a spoon. Dinner's ready, everyone. Let's move to the dining room. As people settled around the massive table, I remained standing. My heart pounded so hard I could barely hear over it. Before we eat, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, there's something you all need to know. I pulled out the documents, laying them on the table. 6 years ago, Grandma left the cottage to me. Only me. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Mauricio forged documents to make it appear we inherited it together, and now he's gambled it away to criminals. The silence that followed was deafening. That's a lie, Uncle Robert said finally. No, Mauricio spoke up, his voice hollow. It's true. All of it. Chaos erupted. Aunt Olivia started crying. Uncle Robert shouted about family loyalty. Cousin Pete swore loudly. Enough! Callie's voice cut through the noise. Let Nancy finish. I spread out the documents. It's all here. The original deed, Grandma's letters, the fraud, everything. How could you? Aunt Olivia asked Mauricio, tears streaming down her face. Your own grandmother. I needed the money, he whispered. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out. And now, Uncle Robert demanded. What happens now? I straightened my shoulders. Now, I'm taking legal action to protect the cottage and to finally force Mauricio to face consequences. You'll destroy this family, Uncle Robert warned. No, Connor spoke up from behind me. Secrets and enablers destroy families. The truth might be the only thing that can save it. As arguments erupted around the table, I caught Mauricio's eye. For the first time since this began, I saw something there besides desperation. I saw fear. The next morning, I sat in the police station, watching Detective Torres review the documents. Each tick of the wall clock felt like a hammer blow. This is extensive fraud, she said finally. And you're sure you want to press charges? Yes. My voice didn't waver. It's time. She was about to respond when her phone buzzed. The conversation that followed made my blood run cold. There's been an incident at the cottage, she said, hanging up. We should go, now. The drive to the cottage was a blur. As we turned onto the gravel drive, my heart stopped. The front door was splintered, windows broken. Spray paint marred the white siding. Pay up or burn. 2 police cars were already there. Connor's truck pulled up behind us, and he rushed to my side. I came as soon as you texted, he said, then saw the damage. Jesus Christ. Detective Torres was already talking to the other officers. I walked up to the porch, glass crunching under my feet. The porch swing, Grandma's swing, lay broken on its side. Nancy. Callie's voice made me turn. She ran up the drive, Aunt Olivia right behind her. We saw your message. Are you okay? I'm fine, but... Where's Mauricio? Aunt Olivia demanded. As if summoned by his name, a car screeched into the driveway. Mauricio jumped out, followed by a man I'd never seen before. My brother's face was bloody. Nancy, he shouted, you have to leave, now. The stranger grabbed Mauricio's arm. This your sister? The one with the deed? Detective Torres and the other officers moved quickly, hands on their weapons. Sir, step away from him. This ain't your business, cops, the man sneered. This is family business. It became our business when you vandalized private property, Torres replied. Hands where we can see them. Everything happened fast after that. The man shoved Mauricio aside and ran. Officers tackled him before he reached his car. Mauricio collapsed on the gravel, blood dripping from his nose. They came for me first, he gasped as I knelt beside him. Said if I didn't bring them the deed, they'd burn everything down. Aunt Olivia rushed to get her first aid kit from her car. Callie helped Mauricio to the porch steps, while Connor and I followed Detective Torres inside to assess the damage. The interior was ransacked, furniture overturned, photos smashed. They'd even ripped up floorboards, probably looking for hidden valuables. This is what gambling debts look like, Torres said quietly. These people don't play by legal rules. What do we do? We've got enough to arrest his associates now, but Mauricio needs to cooperate. Tell us everything. Connor squeezed my shoulder. I'll get started boarding up the windows. Outside, I found Mauricio sitting on the steps, while Aunt Olivia cleaned his face. He looked broken, defeated. How many are there? I asked. How many people are you involved with? 3 main guys, he whispered. But their network, it's big. Detective Torres stepped forward. Mr. Whitney, we need your formal statement. The more you tell us, the more we can protect your family. He looked up at me, eyes red. Nancy, I'm so sorry. I never meant... Save it, I cut him off. Just tell them everything. For once in your life, do the right thing. As the police took Mauricio's statement, more family members arrived. Uncle Robert, Cousin Pete, even distant relatives who'd heard about the drama. They formed a work crew without being asked. boarding windows, sweeping glass, righting furniture. Callie found me in Grandma's old room, picking up scattered photos. "Look what I found," she said, holding up an intact picture. It showed Grandma on the porch swing, young Mauricio and me on either side of her. We were all laughing at something long forgotten. "She knew this would happen," I said softly. "Maybe not exactly this, but something like it. That's why she left the cottage to me." "What are you going to do with it now?" Before I could answer, Connor called from downstairs. "Nancy, Zuriel's here." The lawyer stood in the living room, briefcase in hand. "I've filed emergency injunctions," he announced, "and I've contacted a security company. They'll be here within the hour to install a system." "Thank you," I said. "What about Mauricio?" "He's looking at serious charges, but his cooperation might help." Zuriel paused. "The gambling ring he was involved with, the police have been trying to crack it for months. His testimony could be valuable." I watched through the window as Detective Torres led Mauricio to her car. Our eyes met briefly before he ducked inside. "He's going to need a good lawyer," I said. "I know one," Zuriel replied. "But first, let's focus on securing your property. Your grandmother protected this place for a reason. Now it's your turn." I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. But looking around at my family working together to repair the damage, I knew I wasn't carrying it alone. 2 weeks after the break-in, I stood in the cottage's newly repaired living room, surrounded by paint swatches and renovation catalogues. The security system beeped softly as Callie let herself in through the front door. "You won't believe what I just heard," she announced, dropping her bag on the counter. "Mauricio's testimony led to 6 arrests yesterday, major players in the gambling ring." "Good." I tacked another paint sample to the wall. "Maybe some good will come from all this. Have you visited him yet?" "No." I stepped back to examine the colors. "Have you?" "Yesterday." Callie picked up a catalogue. "He's different, clearer. Being in custody probably saved his life." The security system chimed again. This time it was Aunt Olivia, carrying a box of old photographs. "Found these in my attic," she said. "Thought they might help with inspiration for the renovation." She paused, looking around. "What exactly are you planning to do with the place?" I picked up a business plan from the coffee table and handed it to her. "I'm turning it into a women's retreat center, a place for healing, just like it was for us growing up." Olivia's eyes widened as she read. "Professional counseling services, art therapy, meditation spaces." "Nancy, this is incredible." "That's not even the best part," Callie chimed in. "Tell her about the scholarship program. We'll offer free stays for women leaving abusive situations or recovering from addiction," I explained. "Grandma always said this place had healing energy. Time to put it to good use." The doorbell rang, Connor and Uncle Robert, carrying lumber for the new deck. "Security company called," Connor said, setting down the wood. "They're adding cameras to the back property line tomorrow." Uncle Robert cleared his throat awkwardly. "Nancy, about what I said at the dinner, about destroying the family. It's okay." "No, it's not. I was wrong. This," he gestured around the room, "this is bringing us together in ways Mauricio's secrets never could." My phone buzzed, a text from Zuriel. "Plea deal offered. Meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. "Speaking of Mauricio," I said, showing them the message. "Are you going?" Callie asked. "Yes." I set down the paint samples. "He needs to see what his actions set in motion, both the bad and the good." The next morning, I sat across from Mauricio in the jail's visiting room. He looked healthier than I'd seen him in years, clear-eyed, steady. "They're offering 5 years," he said without preamble. "Could be out in 3 with good behavior." "Are you taking it?" "Yes." He folded his hands on the table. "It's fair. More than fair, considering everything." I pulled out my tablet and showed him the renovation plans. "This is what I'm doing with the cottage." He studied the images, tears forming in his eyes. "Grandma would have loved this." "I know. Nancy, He wiped his eyes. "I keep thinking about what you said, About consequences. You were right. I needed this. Needed to hit bottom. Are you going to meetings? He nodded. Every day in here. Turns out there are a lot of us gambling addicts in prison. He attempted a weak smile. Who knew? Mauricio. I know. Bad joke. He looked down at his hands. The therapist here says I use gambling to feel powerful, to feel in control. Pretty ironic, huh? And now I'm learning what real control feels like, making amends, taking responsibility. He met my eyes. I'm sorry, Nancy, for everything. The guard called time. As I stood to leave, Mauricio spoke again. That program you're starting, the addiction recovery part. When I get out, maybe I could help, share my story. I paused at the door. We'll see. Prove you've changed first. Back at the cottage, I found Callie and Connor painting the living room in the sage green I'd finally chosen. Aunt Olivia sat at the new kitchen island, sorting through applications for the retreat program. You won't believe how many inquiries we've had already, she said, waving a stack of papers. Word spreading fast. People need this, Callie called from her perch on the ladder. A safe place to heal. I picked up a brush and joined them, working in comfortable silence until Connor spoke up. How is Mauricio? Different, I said, carefully cutting in along the ceiling. Maybe even better. Think he'll stay that way? I don't know. I stepped back to admire our work. But that's not my responsibility anymore. This is. The setting sun streamed through the new windows, casting long shadows across the freshly painted walls. In 2 months, we'd welcome our first guests. Women seeking refuge, healing, hope, just like Grandma had offered to so many others during her lifetime. She'd be proud, Aunt Olivia said softly, reading my thoughts. Of all of this, of you. I smiled, dipping my brush back into the paint. I know. That's why I'm doing it. 6 months later, I stood in front of the cottage, now renamed Grace Haven, watching our first group of residents arrive. The transformation was complete. Fresh paint, new furniture, healing gardens, and most importantly, a sense of purpose. First day jitters? Connor asked, helping a woman with her bags. A little. I checked my clipboard. We're at full capacity. 12 women. The front door opened, and Callie bounded out. She'd quit her job to become our full-time activities coordinator, and her enthusiasm was contagious. Everyone's settling in, she reported, and wait until you see what Aunt Olivia's cooking for dinner. My phone buzzed, a text from Zuriel. Mauricio's parole hearing next month. He's asking if you'll speak. Before I could respond, one of our new residents approached. Sarah, mid-40s, hands shaking slightly as she spoke. I just wanted to say thank you, she said quietly. My counselor said it would take months to get a spot here. When you called about the opening, we prioritize emergency cases, I explained, remembering her intake form. Gambling addiction, like Mauricio. Lost everything, like Mauricio. But unlike my brother, she'd sought help before hitting rock bottom. The security system chimed as more women arrived. Each had their own story. Domestic violence, addiction, trauma. Each looked at the cottage the same way I used to, like it was a lighthouse in a storm. Nancy, Aunt Olivia called from the kitchen window. The reporter's here. I'd agreed to one interview about Grace Haven, hoping to reach more women who needed help. The reporter, Maria, met me on the front porch. This place has quite a story, she said, setting up her recorder. Family drama, betrayal, redemption. But what made you choose this particular mission? I watched a group of women touring the meditation garden with Callie. Sometimes the worst things in our lives lead us to our true purpose. My brother's addiction nearly destroyed this place. Now it helps others overcome their own battles. Speaking of your brother, sources say he's up for early parole. That's not part of this story, I said firmly. Today is about these women and their journeys. After the interview, I found Connor in the workshop we'd built behind the cottage. He was teaching a woodworking class, part of our therapy program. Look what Sarah made, he said, holding up a small jewelry box. First time she's ever used tools. It's beautiful, I told Sarah, who beamed with pride. The day flew by in a blur of activities. Art therapy in the sunroom, group counseling in the living room, cooking classes in the kitchen. By evening, the cottage hummed with a new kind of energy. Hope, possibility, strength. During dinner, my phone buzzed again. This time, a call from the prison. Nancy. Mauricio's voice was clear, steady. I saw the article about Grace Haven online. They published it already. How are you? Good. Really good. 9 months sober, leading GA meetings here twice a week. He paused. The parole hearing. I know. I'm not asking you to support my release. Just tell the truth, whatever you think they should know. After dinner, I found Aunt Olivia in Grandma's old garden, now transformed into a healing labyrinth. Mauricio called, I said, sitting beside her on the stone bench. And? He's different, calmer, more himself, like the brother I used to know. She patted my hand. People can change, dear, if they want to badly enough. But can they be trusted again? That's not for us to decide. We can only create space for possibility. She gestured at the cottage. Like you've done here. Later that night, after everyone had settled in, I sat on the new porch swing. The security lights cast a soft glow over the property, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Connor joined me, 2 cups of tea in hand. Penny for your thoughts. I'm going to speak at his hearing, I said, accepting the tea. Not to support or oppose, just to tell the truth. Which is, that addiction nearly destroyed our family, but it also led to this. I looked at the cottage, windows glowing warmly in the darkness. Maybe both things can be true. Maybe that's what healing really looks like. My phone lit up with a message from Sarah. Thank you for today. First time I felt hope in years. I showed Connor the message and he smiled. Grandma would say that's not a coincidence. No, I agreed, sipping my tea. She'd say it's Grace. The owl called again, closer now. Inside, I could hear laughter from the community room, women finding connection, understanding, strength. The cottage had always been a sanctuary, but now it was something more. It was a beginning. The parole hearing room felt smaller than I expected. Mauricio sat at a table facing the board, his hand steady as he spoke about his recovery. I waited my turn, listening as he detailed his progress, his remorse, his plans for the future. Ms. Whitney? The board chairman nodded to me. You may speak now. I stood, smoothing my skirt. My brother betrayed our family's trust. He committed fraud, endangered our legacy, and caused harm that can't be undone. I paused, meeting Mauricio's eyes. But he also sparked a change that's helped dozens of women rebuild their lives. I told them about Grace Haven, about Sarah and the others who'd found healing there, about addiction's ripple effects, both destructive and transformative. I can't tell you if he's ready for release, I concluded, but I can tell you he's not the same person who went in. Outside the hearing room, Mauricio caught up to me. Nancy, wait. They'll notify you of their decision in a few days, I said. I know. That's not... He ran a hand through his hair. Remember when we were kids, and I caught Callie falling from that tree? Of course. You said that day that I was your hero. His voice cracked. I want to be that person again. Not for you, but for myself, for others who are struggling like I was. One day at a time, right? He nodded. One day at a time. Back at Grace Haven, I found Sarah teaching another resident how to use the lathe in the workshop. Her hands were steady now, her eyes clear and focused. Look what we made, she said proudly, holding up a set of wooden candlesticks. For the dining room, Callie burst in, waving her phone. Nancy, the grant came through. We can add the East Wing. The expansion would mean 8 more beds, more lives we could touch. As we celebrated, Connor arrived with lunch for everyone. How'd it go? He asked quietly. I told the truth, all of it. I watched Sarah showing off her woodwork. Whatever happens next is up to him. That evening, we held our weekly community dinner. Residents past and present filled the dining room, sharing stories and strength. Sarah's candlesticks graced the center of the table, flames dancing as Aunt Olivia served her famous lasagna. "I have an announcement," Sarah stood, her voice strong. "Today marks 6 months clean, and I got a job, a real one, at a furniture maker's shop." Applause erupted. She'd started in our workshop barely able to hold a hammer. Now she was building a future, piece by piece. My phone buzzed. The parole board's decision. I stepped onto the porch to read it. Parole granted with conditions: mandatory counseling, regular check-ins, supervised work program. Below that, a note: candidate shows exceptional progress and genuine remorse. Family support system in place. Connor found me still staring at the message. "You okay?" "I think so." I showed him the phone. "They're releasing him next month." "What are you thinking?" Inside, laughter rang out as someone told a joke. Through the window, I could see Sarah showing Aunt Olivia her portfolio of woodwork designs. New residents sat with program graduates, soaking in proof that change was possible. "I'm thinking about something Grandma used to say," I replied. "Grace isn't about getting what you deserve. It's about growing into what you could be." Wise woman. She knew the cottage would become this. Maybe not exactly this, but something that mattered. I turned to face him. Mauricio asked if he could volunteer here once he's settled, leading GA meetings, sharing his story. "What did you say?" "I said we'd start with him attending meetings first, as a participant, not a leader. Show up, do the work, prove he means it." "And if he does?" Sarah's voice carried through the open window as she described her new job. Another resident cheered as she shared news about finding an apartment. Inside that cottage, lives were being rebuilt, hope restored, grace given and received. "Then he'll be welcome here," I said, "just like everyone else who's ready to change." Connor squeezed my hand as we headed back inside. The dining room glowed with warmth and conversation, Sarah's candlesticks burning bright at the center of it all. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new residents, new stories of struggle and strength. But tonight, watching this unlikely family share a meal and their victories, I finally understood what Grandma meant about grace. It wasn't just about second chances or forgiveness. It was about creating space for possibility, for transformation, for becoming. The cottage had always been meant for this, not just surviving betrayal, but transforming it into something beautiful, something that mattered, something that healed.